Hi everyone, this is your host Alonso. Thank you so much for joining us early today. We're about to get started here in around 9 minutes. Hi everyone, I see a couple more of you have joined us a little early today. We're about to get started in around 6 minutes. Thank you. Alrighty, we're about 2 minutes from getting started here. To welcome you all who are joining us early, really quick, I wanted to invite you to use the question box that you see on your side panel and tell me where you're tuning in from today. We're broadcasting live from the Seattle metropolitan area in an island called Mercer Island, and it's a beautiful day here today. Let's see how many. Okay, Cheryl, welcome. Cheryl from San Diego. Stacy Person, welcome from Connecticut. Alita Burkey from Columbus, Ohio. Welcome, Alita. Jessica Hendricks, welcome from Louisville, Kentucky. Hello, Rain, good to see you. From Colorado. Welcome, Mark Boundy from Mercer Island. Oh, love Mercer Island. I'm in sunny Phoenix, Arizona. Alrighty. Welcome, Deborah from Connecticut. I love it. I love it. Welcome, Paige Hanlon from Texas. What a fantastic audience. I'm already getting very excited about this webinar. Guys, I'm telling you, I predict this is going to be one of our best webinars on the topic of sales coaching. So I'm very happy to see you guys here. Daniel Reyes, bienvenido from Mexico. It is not unusual to have a global audience, which makes these webinars even more fun during the discussions and the polls. Jessica is already asking if we are going to be able to access the recording afterwards, and the answer is a big yes. Right after the webinar, as soon as the video renders, I'll be sending you a copy. And ladies and gentlemen, it is 11 o'clock Pacific time here in Mercer Island in the Seattle metropolitan area. That means we are going to get started. For those who just joined, I want to welcome you all onto today's webinar on the future of sales coaching. Can we click on the next slide? Before we get started, I would like to go over a few items so you know how to participate in today's event. You should see something that looks like the screenshot on this slide on your computer in the upper right corner of the screen. You're listening using your computer speaker system by default. If you prefer to join over the phone, just select telephone in the audio pane and the dial-in information will be displayed. You'll have the opportunity to submit questions and comments by typing them in the question pane on the control panel, just like we just did to welcome some of you. We'll address questions in the moment or at the end of the session. Now, here's an important message for you all. These live interactive webinars work because of you and because of the other people who are part of it. There are two key rules that will help you make the most of this event. Number one, be generous. Every time there is a new chat or question, chime in, not because you're an expert, not because you're smarter than everyone, but because you are generous. Rule number two, go first. If you're nervous and would prefer to follow, don't. Try it out, put it out there for the rest of us. Finally, yes, again, we are recording this webinar and we'll be sending you a copy in a follow-up email. I would like now to introduce our presenters. Today we have Norman Behar, Managing Director at the Sales Readiness Group, and our special guest, Jake Miller, Product Marketing Manager at Allego. Norman and Jake, welcome.
Thanks, Alonso.
Hi, Alonso. This is Norman, and I'm really excited.
Give me a second. I think it looks like Norman is muted. Thank you, everyone, for bearing with us. You're muted, Norman.
Alonso, can you hear me? Jake?
I can hear you.
Hello?
Hi, can the guests hear me?
Okay.
How about now? Can you hear me now?
We are live.
All right, thank you. Sorry about the false start there. This is Norman Behar with Sales Readiness Group, and as Alonzo mentioned, we're really excited to host today's webinar. We have record registrations for today. My colleague Jake Miller from Allego is going to be on with us. He's on right now, actually. I'll just share a little bit about myself and Sales Readiness Group, and then I'd love to turn it over to Jake to comment a little bit about himself and Allego. I know we're really both very excited about this topic. As Alonzo mentioned, I'm one of the managing directors, and I was one of the founders of Sales Readiness Group. And I'm passionate about sales and sales management. I did start my career in sales, sold B2B for a number of years before moving into sales management and later on into executive level and leadership positions. And one of the things I really found over the years is that those frontline sales managers have a profound impact on performance. So you think about a high-performing sales team or an average-performing sales team, or unfortunately in some cases lower-performing sales teams, you can often point to the leadership capabilities, the management capabilities, and in line with today, the coaching capabilities of those frontline managers. And as it turns out, that is actually the fastest-growing part of our business. We do a tremendous amount of work with our clients on sales training, but in the last couple of years, the work we've been doing in terms of helping companies develop better managers and coaches has really been exceptional. So we're excited about that and excited that so many people were interested in today's topic about the future of sales coaching. And that brings me to our guest, Jake Miller. Jake is involved in product marketing at Allego, one of the leading sales enablement platforms. And Jake, why don't I just turn it over to you and let you introduce yourself to our audience today?
Sure. Thanks, Norman. Great to be here, everyone. Again, Jake Miller over at Allego Product Marketing. Really excited to talk to you about sales coaching today, the future of sales coaching. I'm going to be able to provide some insight into how organizations are using technology to optimize their coaching. A little bit about Allego. We are a sales learning and readiness platform that combines training, practice, coaching, sharing knowledge among a sales team, sharing content, to drive better sales performance. And we've helped a ton of organizations optimize their coaching with technology. I'm going to be able to share some of that with you. A little bit about myself. I started out my career in sales as well, in the high ticket retail space. So commission only, no base pay, just kind of hustling. And, I'm really passionate about this topic because if it weren't for having managers who are really good coaches, I wouldn't have been able to have the success that I had in sales, which really kind of opened up a whole slew of things in my life. So really passionate about this. And, I've been with Allego since the early days, and just have kind of gotten to see how this market, how this technology for coaching has really expanded and evolved, and watched how organizations have increasingly adopted this. Allego, we've been on the Inc. 500 the last 2 years. We're actually the 5th fastest growing software company in America in 2017, and we do coaching, sales coaching technology and learning. And so today I'm not going to talk about Allego today. I'm going to talk about these technologies because there are a lot of vendors out there and they're great. And I'm going to be able to kind of paint the picture for you of kind of how these technologies are being used on the ground today. So really excited to be here.
Jake, thank you very much. So with that, let's jump in. And again, if anyone has questions along the way, we're going to allow Alonzo to moderate. And if he sees something interesting that hits the flow, we'll try and address it in real time. If not, we'll also have time for Q&A after the webinar. So with that, let me just quickly share our agenda. So we want to start with some research and insights. It's always good to take a look at data, take a look at kind of what some best practices are, and then really acknowledge some of the challenges and opportunities that exist within sales organizations, the types of coaching solutions that exist today, and how companies are leveraging technology. And like Jake, I have some concrete examples that we can share where companies have taken coaching techniques and really leveraged technology to make it a part of the rhythm and cadence of the business, as opposed to something that seems more like once a quarter or periodic, and really build it into the flow of business. And of course, some key takeaways from today's webinar. So with that, let me start with just a little bit of research. This was some Sales Readiness Group research we did with Selling Power. And what we really wanted to understand is, what was it that managers did differently or better in top performing sales organizations, So through Selling Power, there was a survey with 400 respondents from about 20 different industries, with over 50% of the respondents being sales leaders. So we thought it was a pretty good sample. Also, companies of different sizes. And we took the responses and we kind of grouped the companies into three groups. We had our core lower performing groups where they reported that less than 25% of the sales team made quota. Our average performing groups, who are pretty generous there, we said anywhere between 25 to 75% is average. And then we looked at the highest performing, or what we call the high impact sales organizations, and where more than 75% of the team made quota. And so we want to say, well, what are the hallmarks? We published a really nice report called the 5 Hallmarks of High Impact Sales Organizations. This report you can download off our website. But the Cliff Notes version is there were these 5 hallmarks: coaching, managing performance, recruiting and hiring, building trust and respect, and that their organizations made a higher degree of investment in those managers. I'm not going to go into all of those because our topic today is really about coaching, but coaching was the number one hallmark of those top performing teams where 75% or more of the sales reps achieved quota. And what we found was really interesting, and maybe they're correlated, is that managers at those organizations spend more time coaching. So the amount of time that, those managers, 65% of those managers spent more than 20% of their time coaching. The other thing we found in the study, it's not in the slide is that those managers were also more effective at coaching. So there's a really compelling business case to make for coaching. Obviously, performance management, leadership, hiring the right people, also key skills that are covered in our programs. But for today, like Jake, I really want to focus on coaching. And Jake, I know you guys conducted some of your own research and would love you to share kind of what you guys found about coaching with our participants.
Yes. So our research so we conducted research across almost 300 sales training leaders, sales enablement leaders, sales managers, frontline sales managers, and sales reps across B2B organizations, life sciences, high tech, financial services, lots of different sectors. And, our research really showed the same thing, that everyone agrees that coaching is highly valuable and that it is really the number one determinant for performance. However, what we found was, we asked about the kinds of coaching that are going on in organizations today, the perceptions and preferences regarding coaching. And the first kind of the big kind of highlight, we asked managers and reps, does the coaching that managers actually provide make a positive impact on deals, right? We all agree that coaching itself is good, but is the coaching that's actually being provided working? And 93% of managers, so most managers, said yes, the coaching that we're providing makes an impact on deal outcomes. But with reps, only about 2/3 of reps actually agreed with that. So there was a big kind of disparity that we saw, and that really kind of kicked off the whole rest of the line of inquiry with this research that we did. And a lot of folks will ask, well, maybe the reps were wrong. Maybe the coaching does impact performance in a positive way, or maybe they just don't like their managers, or something along those lines. But the point here is that whether or not it's true that the manager's coaching is actually impacting deals, if reps don't feel like the coaching that they're receiving is helping them, it's going to prevent managers from being able to really drive the impact, the possible impact that you can with coaching. So it was a really interesting result to kind of bring into the mix.
Jake, I think it's really an interesting point because I think you're right. It's the rep's perception that is really important. If the reps believe it's helping, then they're going to be more receptive. And that's one of the reasons we really look at coaching as something that needs to be collaborative between the manager and the sales rep. And I think sometimes managers still resort more to telling and, here's how you should advance this deal. And they do a lot of deal coaching, and they think they're coaching, but what they're really doing is more providing direction. And I think one of the things we want to do is really make sure that the coaching is collaborative in nature and that's participative and really actively involves the reps. It's going to be a point I'll make a little bit later, but the key here is really empowerment and helping the reps learn from the coaching to be able to solve some of their own challenges, whether that's skills related or deal related. So more to come on that. But with that, I want to just transition to challenges and opportunities. And I'm going to ask Jake to share a little bit more of his research. But as Alonzo mentioned, we do want to keep it participative. So I want to launch a chat question and love to hear from you, our audience. What are your most significant sales coaching challenges? And to respond, just go into the question panel on the right and feel free to kind of type free form. Would be really interested to hear, what are some of the sales coaching challenges within your organization? And the reason I mention this is because we rarely talk to any organization where they don't feel sales coaching is a good idea. And if you Google sales coach, you're going to find lots of interesting articles and blogs and compelling reasons. But yet many, many companies are or their managers aren't conducting coaches. So we know they're coaching, so we know there's challenges. And let's just take a look at some of those. Getting managers to ask and not to tell. Reps are not asking for help. Getting the resources allocated. Time is one that's coming up. Different coaching methodologies. Fear of conflict. Stacy put in fear of conflict. That's a really interesting point, because if you don't provide coaching, I actually think you may set yourself up for more conflict. Team might be reluctant to accept new methodologies. Certainly with veteran performers, that can be a challenge. I mean, I'm seeing just a lack of time. The reps are remote, so how do you coach remote teams? Similar, what do I do to coach inside teams? Do I listen in on calls? Again, really great responses. As Alonso said, the webinars are more interesting when you participate. So appreciate the number of answers that we got to this question. I'm going to go ahead and we'll take those answers and we'll try and summarize those. Maybe we'll even do a blog on those. But Jake, when you did your research, you also found some of these same barriers to coaching and maybe some others. So I'd like to turn it back to you and just have you share with us what some of the barriers you found to coaching were.
Sure. Thanks, Norman. Yeah. So overwhelmingly in our research, it was time. We laid out a bunch of different possible barriers for people to choose from, and managers on balance, the majority said, I don't have time to consistently deliver the high quality coaching. So I know a couple audience members had mentioned time. Especially, so many more teams now are remote. That's something that someone in the audience mentioned as well. And, getting the time to be able to go around and deliver, real high quality coaching, and coaching that focuses on skills rather than just helping to, close the deals that are in the pipeline, just kind of coaching to the deals. This is something that managers clearly struggle with. The other kind of top three, we don't offer training on coaching. So, a lack of kind of knowing what to do when it comes to coaching, not having that toolkit, so to speak, of best practices to use. And then the third, my reps don't want to be coached. There's a real perception that we've found among managers that, the reps don't really like coaching. They don't really care to be coached. They just kind of, it's not high on their radar that this is something coming from top down from the organization, but the reps don't really want it. And it's interesting because some of our other research, which we'll get to later in this presentation, one of the top things that reps actually wanted when asked, what will help you improve your performance, was more skills-based coaching. So yeah, just a really interesting set of results, and we can talk about how we're going to how you can overcome these challenges.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. As I think about three of the areas you just mentioned, the issue of time, the issue of reps may not wanting the coaching, and you've kind of got some conflicting information on that. And I do think that gets to the third point, the difference between deal and skill coaching. And so what we found in terms of the time is that sales coaching, I think managers and organizations are right. It does require more time up front. So there's investment of learning how to coach, taking the time to develop coaching plans, providing the feedback. And so arguably sales managers are really busy. But in order to enable their team, what they'll find is that if they can allocate the time up front, it will actually be a time saver over time, because as their team is empowered to solve their own problems, they're going to find that they have more time to do things that are strategic. And so I think what we've found is that a lot of the time managers spend today is as a chief problem solver. And one of the reasons they're solving the problems is that the reps don't have the skills to solve those problems for themselves. On the second point that gets to kind of the receptivity to coaching, I think it does get to deal or what we call opportunity coaching versus skills coaching. And so definitionally, opportunity coaching might be I'm having a problem advancing an opportunity within an account. I'm not getting access to the decision maker. The customer went quiet on me. Those kind of things can be discussed during a weekly pipeline review. We find that most managers, particularly those that came up through the sales ranks, so if you had someone who was selling at Allego and then became a manager, they've probably been through those situations before, so they might be able to have some really good advice. So we do find that managers want to provide opportunity or deal coaching. There's probably still a better way to do it to make it collaborative as opposed to instructional. But where managers really, are having a more of a challenge, and the area that reps are really asking for is skills coaching, because this really gets to the development of knowledge and skills. And this has to really be planned. You have to be able to assess kind of where are the skill gaps. You need to make sure that there's buy-in from the sales team, and that the salespeople really believe the coaching sessions will be productive. So we see that there's a lot of emphasis by managers on opportunity coaching. In many ways warranted. I mean, sales managers are there to help their teams close business, but the skills coaching will really enable higher levels of performance and greater enablement of that sales team. So Jake, with that, I'd love you to go forward and just kind of share with us a little bit more about where the manager's focus is and where it should be.
Sure, yeah. So as you can see here, this is some results from this survey as well. When we asked about, what are the types of coaching that are actually going on in the organization today, in your organization. So you can see the boxes on the left are what the manager's responses were, and the boxes on the right were the reps' responses. And we actually took kind of every possible topic of conversation during a coaching interaction and separated them out into really 15 different types of coaching conversations. And then we broke those 15 out by how close in proximity would the topic of that conversation be to the actual deals in the pipeline today, right? So the darker colored boxes are conversation topics of coaching conversations that are more deal focused, deal coaching, talking about opportunities, managing the pipeline, prospecting, lead generation, things, that are closer to the deals, versus the lighter colored boxes are more long-term skills development type of coaching conversations, like presentation skills, product messaging, how to manage a sales meeting, things that are going to help the rep learn, or things that are kind of helping them learn how to fish instead of sort of fishing for them. And it was really interesting when we asked reps and managers which ones are most prevalent. The managers all said, well, yeah, the majority of the coaching we do is more of these skills-based ones. But when we asked the reps what type of coaching they're getting, their perception was more that, no, it's really more, we're just kind of talking about the deals that I have in the pipeline, more deal-based coaching. And so we kind of realized that, this could be some of where the disparity is between, reps and managers, the disagreement on the effectiveness of coaching. Reps want more skills-based coaching. So we know skills-based coaching helps and works the best, but managers aren't providing and don't have as much of the time to provide that skills-based coaching. And because managers, like Norman mentioned, are under the gun to produce the number, it's the tyranny of the urgent, right? And this is in no way to say that deal coaching is not equally important as skills-based coaching. It is. It's just that striking that balance between the two is really key. So yeah, just a really interesting result here.
Absolutely. And I think, it gets to the perception. I actually think the reality that there is more deal coaching or opportunity coaching on than there is skills coaching. I think it also ties very much into whether the coaching itself is directive versus collaborative. And I think you guys have some research on that as well.
Yes, we do. Yep. And so that was another point that we wanted to ask about. What is the kind of the tone of the coaching conversation? Is it more directive, where the manager is assessing a situation with a rep and just kind of here's what to do, versus more collaborative styles of collaborative conversations that are more facilitative, delegating, and when we asked managers and reps, the results showed that managers tend to think that they do less of the directive style coaching than reps do, and that managers also felt like they do more of the collaborative style coaching than reps do. And so it just kind of speaks to, having those best practices, having a playbook for how to coach, helping managers know, what types of how to approach a coaching conversation based on the rep, their situation, what is their competency levels, where are they at. So it was, this was super interesting.
Yeah, I think, this idea of having collaborative conversations is also really a learned skill. If we think about like a model we use called the 3 A's, if the managers can slow it down, I know managers, I think this gets into that issue of time and urgency, that when you telling is much more expedient than coaching. It's much faster to tell someone than to help them self-discover. But the problem with telling is it doesn't stick for very long and it comes across as very authoritative. Whereas if you actually could use a collaborative conversation, so our model is simply ask first. So make sure you're asking good questions, much like you would a customer. Actively listen, really understand what their points are, maybe provide a little deeper inquiry so you understand their perspective, and assume the best of intentions. Assume that the sales reps really want to do better. And so much of of coaching is really about how to have a collaborative coaching conversation that creates receptivity. And I think that really gets into the dichotomy that you mentioned in terms of this perception that the sales reps may not want coaching and your actual finding that they do want more coaching.
Yes, exactly. And that's exactly it. It's that reps want more kind of skills-based coaching, which speaks to the fact that they're looking for kind of more of a collaborative kind of approach from managers, right? Because if my manager is if every coaching interaction that we're having, or the majority of those interactions, are just talking about the deals in the pipeline, my deals, it's going to kind of, and not as much talking about helping me build skills that are going to help me become a better salesperson for the long run. It kind of feels more one-sided. It kind of feels more like a take rather than a give and take. And so that really speaks to that, need for that collaborative coaching.
And I think when you have that collaborative coaching, where it leads you to is really creating the leverage. And this kind of gets back to the point on time. Even though learning how to coach and providing collaborative coaching takes more time than telling, at the end of the day, people learn how to solve their own problems without your involvement. So you go as a manager from being a chief problem solver to an enabler. More importantly, as skills improve, results improve. So as your team's doing a better job of selling, they're going to sell more, and you're going to feel a lot more empowered as a manager because you're going to have time to work on other priorities. So I think we've covered very well, and appreciate the help, Jake, what some of the challenges and opportunities are. What I'd like to do next is really shift to, well, what are some of the solutions? What do those solutions look like? As an intro to that, I'd like to ask Alonzo to launch a poll here, and I'll just read the polling question real quick. How do your sales managers learn to coach their sales teams? Did they figure it out on their own? Were they mentored by more experienced sales managers? Did they go to a formal coaching program? A lot of companies have what I'll call generic coaching programs for managers. Or did they go into a sales coaching program that was really specific to sales coaching? So Alonzo, with your help, I think the poll's open. And Jake, I want to put you on the spot here. You mentioned that you sold kind of high ticket retail. You mentioned it was commission only. You obviously did very well, and you've progressed in your career. But how did you learn as a manager to become a coach?
Well, my experience is selling, I'd say probably there's just one story that really kind of sticks out. I was selling at the time, selling mattresses, expensive kind of mattresses, high ticket price mattresses. And, I was early in my sales career, and I had a manager who was a really great coach. And, she was watching me when I was taking a customer, and it's on a showroom floor, so you can see each other. And I was going through my whole presentation, and the customer didn't make a purchase and left. And when I came back, my manager was talking to me, and she was like, "Look, I was watching you that whole time, and you looked like you were trying really, really hard. Like almost, you looked kind of tense." And it's really important to have the right kind of mindset. And so she started coaching me on kind of having the right mindset, having more of an abundance mentality, and and just being more confident. And so I took that and I said, okay. And this is something I would have never tried if I hadn't had this coaching. And I went back out, took the next customer, went through the presentation. I was really relaxed, very, very free. Got to the end. It was a couple. They said, well, no, we're going to probably wait on making a purchase. They left. And then about 15 minutes later, they came walking back in, and they're like, okay, yeah, they had just gone out to kind of just take a walk around, came back and they're like, okay, yeah, I think we're going to go for it. And actually, we don't want the one that we were kind of thinking about. We want the one over there in that other room. And they point to the room with like the most expensive mattresses that we had. And they had walked in saying, yeah, we're looking to spend $1,000 on a mattress. They walked out with an order for like a $12,000 mattress, right? And so that stuck out to me. I said, wow, if I hadn't had that coaching on the sidelines telling me, hey, look, here's how you should improve, here are the things that you should do, I would have never been able to kind of get to that next level. And so I just always taken that experience with me throughout. Yeah.
Great story. I'll just share a personal anecdote too that it comes to mind. I was selling for a software startup. We were doing B2B sales, and we were really doing very, very well. I was one of the first employees with the company, and at a very early age, I started right out of college at age 21, I had become a top sales performer. And because of the growth of the company, I was promoted to I won't say it's always a mistake, but it's a mistake that companies sometimes make when someone's really not ready to move into management, and they take them from sales to management. And because we were a startup in the software space, we didn't have a training program. And the team was doing pretty well. They were selling a lot. And then I got a call from our VP of HR, and he wanted to see me in his office. He said, Norm, your team's going to revolt. You're telling everyone what to do and how you used to do it. That's not what good management looks like. So I kind of had this aha moment when I took what I was doing as a salesperson and I tried to apply it as a manager, and quickly found out that wasn't going to be a way that really created something that was collaborative and impactful in nature. So it's kind of fun to reflect and learn about that. Alonzo, I don't know if we can share the results yet, but we'd love to see what our audience has shared with us. So it's interesting. Number one responses figured out on their own. So at least I feel a little bit better. I wasn't there by myself trying to figure this out on my own. Probably not the best way to figure it out. I do like saying here is that 22% are now participating in sales coaching programs that are specific to sales management. Roughly 14% go to other coaching programs, and 14%, mentored by more experienced managers, which is also a great way to learn. But I think the really unfortunate thing that I'm taking away from here, Jake, is that over half of the managers, at least based on our polling results here, are left to figure it out on their own. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, this reflects our survey results as well, that there's just kind of an agreement among everybody, all the stakeholders in an organization, that coaching is important, that we need to help our managers do it, but managers feel like they're not getting the support that they need, and this reflects that, and also just frankly what we've encountered in the marketplace as a sales coaching and learning technology provider. Organizations that we've worked with, one of the biggest challenges with driving adoption of this kinds of software is that managers don't always know how to coach. So you can give them great coaching software, but if they don't know how to do the coaching, they're not going to be successful. And so that's another reason why having the ability to help managers become better coaches is so important also.
So that's great. I mean, it's also a really nice transition to where we're going with our presentation today, which is what does really good coaching look like? And then how can you leverage technology to get the most productivity possible from your coaching? So I'll start with a little bit what we think high impact sales coaching looks like. And generally means that the managers are more proficient in making the coaching collaborative. They're actually taking the time to assess sales rep skills. We like to see a joint assessment where the manager assesses and the sales rep assess their own selling skills This keeps the coaching skills focused. It also allows for the sales rep's perspective and a very rich coaching conversation. Based on that, the development of targeted coaching plans, we typically recommend like a quarterly plan, so resetting once a quarter focused on no more than 3 skills. 1 to 2 skills would be just fine. And then following a consistent coaching process. And that's really important because it kind of provides some direction. Where is the coaching going? Also, if you're a VP of sales or a senior sales leader, you don't have people doing it different ways. So it allows the sales team to understand what the coaching is going to look like, and also allows for consistency in the organization. And I think one of the things what we've found is that many coaching programs kind of focus on the far right here, which is the how to coach. But what I think your research shows is that you can't really just get to how to coach. You have to get to the coaching mindset. What's the difference between being a manager and a coach? When is coaching likely to be effective? How do you actually create a coaching mindset and culture? So I remember I mentioned some selling power research we did, and I remember a interview I did with the founder of Selling Power, where we actually called the mindset the why behind sales coaching. And then you really have to, once you kind of set this coaching culture and mindset in place, you really have to figure out, well, what are you going to coach on? So we called the analyze piece the what of sales coaching, and this really involved co-assessment. In our program, it's on 8 key selling skills with 24 behavior statements, but in different organizations that may differ some. But the bottom line there is you want to really be able to discuss performance and focus on a few key skills. This also keeps the coaching very skill-oriented as opposed to deal-oriented. And then really learning a 5-step coaching process, learning how to overcome coaching challenges. For example, if a senior person might be reluctant to receiving coaching, and also an understanding of where you're going to get the highest return on your investment with coaching time. So we like to think about this as the why, what, and how of coaching. I know, Jake, when you and I spoke about this early, or you had a couple of thoughts that were really triggered by this slide.
Yes, yeah. So first of all, on the mindset piece, knowing when to coach, managing versus coaching, a lot of organizations that we're working with, are, able to use this kind of technology to be able to really help managers, first of all, get better at coaching, right? With some of the video coaching technologies out there, for example, you can actually see the content of the manager's coaching conversations with the reps. Through video transcripts of that happen, and then also solutions that have like a feedback element where you can actually, managers and reps can have a back and forth discussion right within the video at different points of the coaching of the like a role play or whatever it might be. And so the fact that you can kind of see the content and gain visibility into the content of those conversations, you can really help managers get better at coaching, help them understand where and when to coach. Maybe one manager is isn't providing very substantive feedback, and sales leadership can then go and say, hey, and help that manager improve. That's one piece. Also knowing when to coach. A lot of sales coaching technologies providing competency dashboards that actually link back to the activities that went on in training or even onboarding. Like if a new rep is coming on, managers being able to have access to dashboards that separate out by skills, different skills and competencies where the reps are doing well and where they're not doing as well, to be able to really target their coaching interventions more accurately, and so to be able to kind of know when to coach. And as far as on the analyze piece for co-assessing performance and analyzing, I put this little note here that video coaching allows reps to be able to kind of see themselves in a more accurate light. One of the things that we've noticed is that using solutions like this to do coaching on video, reps will, a manager might say, hey, you've got an important negotiation coming up, and we always get hit with this particular set of questions. How can you shoot me back a video of how you would respond to that, right? And so then the reps goes in and creates a video themselves as if they were speaking to the customer, and what we find in the reporting that it shows that reps will do 5 or 6 takes before submitting that video back to their manager. So that's actually 5 or 6 times that the rep would have been kind of practicing on a live customer instead of practicing in front of the camera or practicing before they get in front of the customer.
Love that.
So
yeah, absolutely.
so it's really, really interesting, and then just being able to kind of measure the impact of coaching, increasing the number of coaching sessions that you can do. These technologies will help you with that as well. Yeah.
Terrific. So let me just expand on that a little bit. I think that, it's great to say the why, what, when, and how of coaching, but when we start to break this down, and this is actually just from our own coaching curriculum, kind of how it's laid out, and there's a number of great curriculum on the market, but what I want to do is focus a little bit more on the top line here, which is, as a manager, you really have to figure out what is your role of a sales coach and when is coaching the right management action? How do you develop a coaching mindset and culture? When is it appropriate to coach? And that's really through assessment, analyzing performance. Jake, I love what you just shared in terms of being able to practice using the videos. In the past, it had to be more in a conference room and really challenging for remote salespeople, but really figuring out, what are the key skills we want to coach on, and then following a consistent coaching process. And I think when you think about the elements of best practices, the managers who really can understand their role as a coach, can create a coaching mindset and culture, take the time to figure out what to coach on, will then be much better at implementing a coaching process, and we'll get to the point where the sales reps are actually finding the coaching to be of value, where it's helping them develop the skills that they need. So I mentioned this idea of co-assessment, and I just want to touch on it briefly, and then love to have you kind of share a few of your thoughts on this. But you can co-assessment. So these were those 8 selling skills that I mentioned. Again, there's 3 behavior statements. Really can't read it that clearly on the screen here, but a key selling skill might be prospecting. It might be call planning. It might be developing needs through questioning and active listening skills. It might be closing skills. But the idea is to really think about these skills, plot them. We have what's called a development matrix, helps you understand when coaching is going to be most effective. Let the sales rep also assess themselves, compare the two, and then you can have a really rich coaching conversation where there's buy-in and agreement on areas you can help as a manager, and then create a customized coaching plan. And again, Jake, I know you had a couple of thoughts on that, so I'd love to get your input.
Yeah, it reminds me of how we're seeing organizations kind of improve coaching today, and doing things like this drives much better coaching conversations, and then just drives better performance among the reps. Being able to allow reps, like I already mentioned, to self-assess, to see themselves and how they're articulating something, or how their body language is, or the way that they're talking about a particular product, has intrinsic value in that reps will self-correct. Also, being able to kind of have that brief before the coaching conversation goes on, and then afterwards debrief. One organization, it was an IT business management software provider. They were really able to, and one of the audience members mentioned how, what do you do about having a really remote team? This company, they've got almost a completely remote sales force, and they were doing a major shift in their products, and they had to basically retrain and coach everyone. And they were able to, have the managers engaging in coaching conversations remotely through video, through sharing best practices and collaborating through the software. And they were able to actually even have pulling in live sales calls, and then be able to watch, what went on in the call, and provide coaching to it, doing simulated objection handling, where managers could send out an exercise to their team to say, look at, we've got the 10 kind of key objections here. Go ahead and record yourself handling them and send them back in. And the reps will be, as they're making their recording, different objections are popping up in kind of randomized order to give them that kind of the flavor of a real conversation happening. So there's just a lot of really interesting things that you can do, even with a really remote team. I mean, this particular organization, with the kind of the comprehensive program with really developing that coaching culture, they're able to reduce their sales cycle by like 50%, increase average contract value by 20%. Decreasing time to first deal, all the just like the really key metrics that you can drive with having that coaching culture.
Absolutely. And so when we get to the analysts and analyzing, we can then get to the coaching process. And so we recommend a 5-step process. If you Google sales coaching process, you'll see other models. But I think substantively, they have kind of the same elements. Developing the coaching plan. So that's based on the skills assessment. What does that plan really focus on? If you're going to observe a call or go on a call, conducting a pre-call briefing, observing what's going on or listening in on a call, and then a debrief, which is a subject for another webinar. But again, keeping that collaborative and supportive is really important, and then follow up. And I think in the interest of time, I'm going to kind of get us to our next section on technology, but clearly more to come on some of these topics. So I want to talk a little bit, Jake, your area of expertise on leveraging technology. And you had some interesting insights here, and I was hoping you could share this with our participants.
Yes. So we asked managers, what do you feel would help you improve your coaching the most? And the number one the number one response was more training on how to diagnose performance problems. Where to spend my coaching time. And like I mentioned, managers a lot of times feel like they're having to just kind of almost just kind of coach to all different stuff and not have a real targeted approach to their coaching. And so this kind of reflects that. The second is ways to motivate reps to use what they were taught in their coaching during our coaching sessions and actually implement this stuff in their action plans. And then number 3, better dashboards so I can see who needs the most help. So these 3 are all kind of connected because providing you can use dashboards, competency dashboards to be able to monitor improvements along different competencies across your reps over time. If you've got a combination of, you're able to have software that is able to kind of pull out competency levels based on video coaching exercises and how reps are scoring and the feedback they're getting from managers. Also, being able to pull out competencies across the team using, different kind of scorecards and different digital ways of marking down in-person ride-alongs and, in-person coaching. And then being able to feed that back into managers and kind of parse who needs coaching on and on what. So yeah, it was again a really kind of it illuminated something that we had already been kind of seeing.
Yeah, what I really think is important here is that it's the convergence of practices and technology. In other words, they still need the training on how to diagnose the performance problems. To keep that coaching motivational, they really need to know how coaching skills about collaborative coaching, because collaborative coaching is, by its very nature, when you get people involved, it is more motivating. And then really using dashboards in a way that's productive. So I think a lot of managers use dashboards in a way that isn't necessarily constructive or motivating, in that particularly if there's a gap in performance. But I think by taking the time to really kind of sequentially address all 3 of these areas, you end up with a world-class program. And when we look at that, we think about coaching systems today, they can embed a lot of different technology, whether that's micro-learning, field work, the ability to submit videos back, ask the expert support, tools and research, knowledge checks and certifications. These are all kind of the elements that can find their way into the sales enablement platforms. And I know at Allego you have all of these elements and more, but anything else you'd want to add to this, Jake?
Yeah, the only thing I'd add that we haven't talked a whole lot about, when I saw the Ask the Expert, it reminded me, sharing best practices among a sales team is a real important kind of piece. And it's tangentially related to coaching, right? Because we found that one of the big things that helps managers kind of reduce that time burden is to be able to, instead of having to sit down with each of the reps, with a given rep who is struggling with a certain part of the sales process, or who is struggling to articulate a certain point, or listen during and discover business needs at a certain point in the process. Instead of the manager having to do that themselves and show the rep themselves, if you can kind of have a repository of best practice examples honed by your top performers, the managers can actually just say, here's 4 different examples of actual reps on our team delivering this value proposition, or handling this objection, or doing this, handling this negotiation that we typically, get. And so, having that really does help to kind of spread the knowledge among the team, and it helps managers to be able to say, look at here, just go here, and then let's have a conversation after you've watched this.
Absolutely. So I think that's really powerful because they're able to share concrete examples and provide a variety of samples that not only be able to ask, but be actually demonstrate those best practices. And so we think about leveraging technology and combining that with best practices. It really gets to how do you deliver sales coaching programs. And what we find is that blended learning works best. That could be a combination of on-site workshops, the use of virtual classrooms that allow for discussion, and on-demand learning and technology. And I'll give an example. We've just finished a program with, I think, 140 global sales managers for an industrial client. We did a pre-work associated with that, pre-training consultation. We did an on-site workshop tied to one of their national meetings. It was rolled out, I think, in 5 or 6 different classrooms with different groups. And then to be able to support and reinforce that with virtual classrooms where they're able to take what they learned, apply to their teams, come back and discuss that, and then to have on-demand support for the period of a year where you can then reference micro-learning, access the tools, ask the expert. So what we're finding is that customers today are really smart, and depending on their use case, whether it's centralized team, remote teams, time to get together in person, not time to get together in person, flipping the classroom where you may do some of the on-demand learning first and then have a skill application. There's lots of ways to take great content, create great technology, sales enablement technology, and pull that together to create the right learning culture and process related to coaching. So I'm going to wrap up in just a minute with some key takeaways and ask Jake if he has any final thoughts. And then Alonzo, I think we do have some time for some Q&A if there's any questions that you have or our participants have for Jake and I. So some key takeaways from today: managers are critical to the success of their teams. Managers and reps, as we learned from the research from Allego, have different perspectives about coaching. Coaching shouldn't just include how, but needs to include why, what, and I could add when and how to coach. Blended programs will likely deliver the best results. You're using different modalities, getting people together, using on-demand. And as we learn, technology enables better coaching implementation. It makes it a lot easier for sales reps to practice, for managers to provide feedback, and to really leverage even your example, Jake, of Ask the Expert, where you can share numerous examples and feed that back. So, Jake, those are some of the takeaways, I'd say formal takeaways from today's presentation. Anything else you'd like to add before I turn it back to Alonzo?
No, I think that this covers everything that I really wanted to get across. I think final thought is just that really driving that collaboration among your organization is really important, whether it's through coaching, having a more collaborative coaching process, really helping to kind of develop that relationship between reps and their managers, because that relationship is probably the most important for a rep to succeed. And then even driving better collaboration among management and the training organization, having a smoother transition from training, from onboarding, from product launch training, from the national sales meeting, kicking off the new strategy, a smoother transition from training to out in the field, and having managers be more involved in the development process of reps, driving that better collaboration between organizations even is really crucial.
That's excellent. But I think that transition from onboarding to ongoing coaching is really important, and that getting the managers involved is critical. And that's something that we found in our interaction with clients as well. So, Jake, I do want to thank you for being our guest today and the expert advice you're providing and some of the thoughts you provided. For more information on SRG or Allego, we've provided some contact information. And Alonzo, I'd like to turn it back to you for Q&A, and we have a few minutes for that if we have some questions.
Thank you, Norman. Yes, I think we have around 6 more minutes. I'll start with the first question here from Rain. He's asking, what sales skills are managers asking for content? What sales skills are managers asking for content? So if we think about
coaching skills, I think it's more around how to have collaborative coaching conversations and make the coaching motivational. If we're thinking about what skills should they be coaching sales reps on, I think it varies based on the nature of the customer, but two areas, and it reminds me of some other research that we've done as to what skills are going to be most valuable now and in the future. The ability to ask questions to identify needs, and the ability to take what you've learned from when you've identified those needs and to align your solution, your product or solution with the needs of the customer. So if you think about kind of the sequence of selling skills all the way from prospecting and call planning to negotiating and gaining commitment, it seems that, at least from our work with clients, the biggest need is still in the middle, which is developing needs through questioning and active listening skills, and then taking what you've learned and making sure your solution is aligned with the customer's needs.
Fantastic. And I think Rain says thank you, Norman. And I think we have one more question that we're going to, Mari, I see that you posted a question. I'm going to have us follow up with you via email for that one. And I'm not seeing any more questions as of right now. So in the interest of time, let's go ahead and close the Q&A. But before letting everyone go, I have a couple of announcements to make. If you want to learn more on this topic, feel free to contact us. Finally, a short survey will show up as soon as I close this webinar, and we appreciate any feedback you may have for us so that we can continue to improve this complimentary webinar program. Thank you, Norman and Jake. It was a great presentation, and thank you everyone for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thanks, Alonzo. Thanks, Norman.
Thank you, Jake. Take care.
Thanks, everybody.